Hey, what's up, folks? I hope all of you had a good Christmas time, but today we will talk about The Last of Us again. While playing The Last of Us, I came across the suburbs again, and I thought I needed to create another environment. So watch till the end to see the result. Let's go. Because I wanted to create the houses myself, I put together reference photos of some abandoned houses. I also looked for non-abandoned houses to find different house shapes. I started with a basic shape of the house and then made the roof by slicing the edges together. Then I separated the roof from the mesh so I could add a solidifier. I scaled the edges of the house slightly. After that, I added the clapboards by duplicating the floor and extruding it. I scaled the bottom slightly. Then I just used an array, but because the boards would go through the roof, I duplicated the roof, increased the solidifier range, and used the duplicate as a boolean for the clapboards. Next, I added windows using Archimesh. I just looked at some references and placed them in similar locations. The good thing is that they come with cutouts, so I took all the cutouts, put them into a collection, and used another Boolean modifier for the clapboards. Now I started adding details like house edges, window trimmings, a gutter, and a porch. The more detail you build, the more you can destroy for an even more abandoned look. Done with that, I started taking things apart. I always start by removing elements like fence panels or rotating them so it looks like they fell apart. Mostly I make everything wonky, especially the clapboards and the roof. For the clapboards, I use a displacement modifier. Adding wooden boards to the windows is also part of the process. When all of that was done, I had a house that looks like nobody wants to live in it. But all of that is nothing without texturing. For the texturing, I started with the clapboards. I always use two materials and then painted some leaking over certain parts. I also only painted faded wood where it was visible in my earlier references. For the other parts of the house, I just reused materials, but mostly I used a wood material for things like the wooden boards or the porch. For the roof, I always used a tile texture and painted some dry leaves over it, mostly in the corners of the roof. And that's it. I just repeated that for the other houses. I know it's simple, but let me know if you have questions about it. Now it was time for the block out of the scene, so I just used some cubes and spheres and tried things out until I was happy. When I was happy with the rough block out, I imported the houses I made earlier and placed them in the positions of the cubes. I built some fences out of stretched cubes and placed them beside the houses. Next, I focused on the street. I first added a sidewalk and some destroyed cars. I added more details to the road, like some Megascan assets, debris, trash, and junk. I also added a destroyed road barrier, but most importantly, I added some electric poles on the side of the road. Now to the vegetation and background. For the background, I added trees and buildings in the distance. In the foreground, I placed grass and plant assets around the houses and added more trees nearby so it feels more natural. To push the suburban feeling, I also added some skyscrapers far in the distance. Even though it already looks pretty decent, the apocalypse started 20 years ago, so the grass should be much higher. Not to forget, I also added ivy around the houses. Now to the atmosphere and lighting. For the atmosphere, I created a huge sphere and used a volume scatter node as the material. The lighting took some time because I went through many versions: overcast, sunset, or side lighting. You can see some of them here from earlier versions. I mostly played around with different HDRI and tried rotating them in every direction. The last thing I did was add movement to the scene by applying a noise modifier to the rotation of the plants and trees. That's it for Blender. Time for compositing. The compositing was extremely simple. I just used all the render passes and put them back together. Next, I brought the camera from Blender into Nuke, placed the sky in the background, and added some particles in the foreground. I did some adjustments with Cryptomatics, added motion blur, and in the end, applied a few camera effects like lens distortion, grain, and so on. It's really extremely simple. But that's it. Let's have a look at the final product. Let me know what you think by leaving feedback in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my Instagram for some extra scenes that are only there. See you next year.